Good afternoon, members of the board, Mr. Hochstetler, Ms. Ford. It is 2:48 p.m. Call the meeting to order of the Baltimore City Board of Ethics. Did you hear me?
Yeah.
We heard you.
Okay. It's the earbuds. It's the earbuds. Just have to ask. All right.
And Steve, you may have seen on the public agenda, I added a statement that now that we've moved our minutes to recording format, we need to, or you perhaps should read the statement about the Open Meetings Act and the last administrative agenda.
Okay. So you want me to read the statement concerning October's admin session?
Right.
Right. Okay. All right. And so, per the Open Meetings Act, the board discloses that it adjourned its virtual open meeting on October 14th, 2020 to enter into administrative session at approximately 3:38 p.m. All board members were present and members discussed complaints and a city employee's request for guidance on potential outside employment. Now, please understand today that the board may need to close some or all of this meeting to preserve the confidentiality maintained by the Ethics Code or is otherwise authorized by the State Open Meetings Act. Likewise, upon adjournment of the open session, the board may reconvene for an administrative session to discuss non-public administrative functions of the board. Okay.
Wonderful.
So as far as an update today, Jeff, do you want to take that?
Sure. If there are no further updates from you at the moment, wanted to that we have finally rolled out an ethics training on November 5th. Donna and Arnold joined Mara and myself to train DGS, Department of General Services officials, on the ethics law. We've received very positive feedback on that, and we'll be making some changes accordingly. And we've already had some upcoming training schedules as well. On November 13th, the incoming comptroller and officials in his transition staff will be trained on the ethics law. I also was invited to speak to the incoming comptroller, Councilman Henry's transition team, about cooperation with the ethics board and other routine ethics reviews that we can build into the process as they get the Board of Estimates up and running under new leadership. So that was a great opportunity, and it was nice to have that proactive reaching out from that team. Similarly, on November 23rd, we'll be training the incoming council president and the 5 new council members and their staff on the ethics law. I did speak with the incoming council president, Delegate Mosby, who requested the trainings and is making them a priority for his staff and for the new council members coming in. So that was also a great opportunity to get on the radar of those new council members. The next up on the training agenda, we will be needing to contact the incoming mayor and his staff, and then the remaining council members and their staff, as well as figuring out agency heads and their staffs to train. So there's a lot of work on that front, especially since the training regime that the ethics board is responsible for hasn't really been that effective or up and running for a while. So that's good. It's our goal to get all of the required officials trained within the next few months and also make sure that it's open to anybody else who would like to be trained.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. Do you have any other updates as to that we can do in open session?
Yep, very briefly on the new employee orientation, which is now virtual for all incoming employees. We've successfully added an ethics component. It includes a brief video introduction from me, which I think you were referring to earlier. That's on our website. It breaks down in very hopefully easily digestible segments what conflicts of interest are, and really makes it clear that we are here to answer employees and officials' questions moving forward. Mara and I are also working on a new ethics brochure to make part of onboarding for every new employee that includes an acknowledgement that they've received that information and that they've received relevant information about other parts of the ethics code, and they can sign that acknowledgement and return it to the board, which is now required under the ethics code, but has not yet been rolled out. So we're figuring out how best to implement that with the new employee orientation, and have also been in discussions with the Department of Human Resources about other lists of officials and the new employees and new positions and departing employees that we need from them in order to really keep a good review on who's required to file financial disclosures, who is actually needing to be trained, and who needs to still file and sign their ethics acknowledgements. So some good things on that front. And last quick update, on the financial disclosure system, Baltimore City IT is moving forward with the development of that online system, and they're hoping to have a demo for staff the week of the 16th. So those conversations are ongoing, and we're going to be involved at every step of the way and really try to ensure that the directions are clear and it's user-friendly for those who have to file.
Fantastic. Look, thank you for the YouTube channel. I like the thought that it's not on Charm TV. It's not on the city's website. It's independent. And I mean, I think it's one more piece of evidence that this board, just like your office, is independent from the rest of the machinations of city government. So, and I think you did a fantastic job on the technology as well. So thank you both.
Thank you.
So,
and many thanks to Mara for a lot of that. Yes.
Yeah, you did it like lightning quick. And I mean, when I discovered it today, it had already been up for 3 weeks, our last meeting. So I'm glad nobody asked me what happened at the ethics board, because I would have said, oh, I don't know. Why do you care? Because now they can watch it, and they will. So, and that's great. I'm excited that you did that.
Yes, and just a comment with that YouTube channel, we will use that with ideally with any sort of ethics training materials, we can use that channel. And our minutes will probably go up. I mean, tomorrow I'll upload these minutes, so it'll be immediately after the meetings.
That's wonderful. That's one more hat you're wearing over there. You're your own information technology team, so we appreciate that. Yeah. All right. Are we ready to move to old business?
Yeah.
All right. Do we need to go into administrative session in order to discuss the old business?
At least to discuss the solicitation waivers, I don't believe so. And I talked.
Yeah.
And I talked to Tony, and he said you all did that in the past, which I think makes sense, because solicitation waivers and then the reports are made public. So I think that that's appropriate for public session.
Yeah. And they are public. I mean, they've already been vetted by the Board of Estimates half the time. We get them, so they're already public documents.
Yeah. The only thing to keep in mind on maybe some of the reports that are filed for a solicitation request that has already been approved, if it has some sort of personnel information or something like that, maybe just don't mention those. But you all can still review them. Sure.
All right. So let's go ahead and move to Councilman Cohen's waiver request for Digital Divide. And the board had discussion on this agenda item at our last meeting. And Melody and Arnold, how are you feeling about this? Have your questions been answered?
Ladies first.
Frankly, I reviewed the attachments for today's session, and I didn't see a response. And perhaps I missed something, but I only saw 2 letters from Jeff, which led me to believe that we hadn't received a response yet. And perhaps I didn't. Am I missing something?
Yeah, if that wasn't included, that's our fault. There was a response, and
when I looked under the link to old business, old solicitation, Cohen solicitation request, I saw 2 attachments.
Okay.
One was a Word version of your response, and one was a PDF. So if I missed it, I apologize.
No, that's okay, and that may have been our fault. So if I can share with you all in the chat the answers now, and you can take a look at it. I don't think it's that onerous. Again, I apologize if that was an
Arnold,
oversight.
did you see something did you notice? Again, perhaps I missed it.
I didn't see what I would have expected to see. I thought what I was reading was a previously submitted application that showed some funds actually received. I kind of remember one amount coming from one of the foundations. It was like maybe 5 different, something like $38,000 worth of donations for something called Healing the City.
Yeah, that was a solicitation that had already been approved, and we received a report. So that was next on the agenda. So on the digital divide, it appears that we simply that was an oversight. So I apologize for that. I am sending it right now in the chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, your 6 questions, you sent a letter on or about September 14th, because the questions came up right at the first meeting. And you framed those 6 questions with Arnold and Melody. And so I know we're all interested to see what was said.
Absolutely. So let's see here.
I can also send it if you'd like, Jeff.
Yeah, sure. Let me share this with you because I'm on my personal laptop for the video. So I will share this with you, and then you can push it to the group.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know how to do chat all of a sudden.
Well,
it may be because I'm using 2 different, I'm using Zoom and then I'm using WebEx.
I don't know how to view chat either. I'm really decent on Zoom.
If you move your cursor along the bottom menu, there's a little bubble that looks like a conversation bubble. If you hover your cursor over that, it will it should and click it. You should get the chat on the right hand side of your screen.
I am on the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, it's like a conversation bubble.
The cursor's on the plaid of your, I guess that's tartan scarf, but I don't see any bubbles. Okay.
Do you see a place to raise your hand?
I do.
Yeah, on the top of the screen. Yeah, I do see that.
The right of raise your hand is the button for chat.
Okay.
Anyone else using an iPhone?
No, I'm using it.
I can also send it to your. Let me send it to your email real quick as well.
Yeah, that works for me because I got my laptop right here. My laptop's so old it doesn't have a camera.
Well, rather than, if you're going to send something that requires us to stop and read, why not just share it?
Yeah.
We can all look at it together. Let's see.
I will send it to the chat right now, just so it's there. Just
and
to
I
make
can
sure.
send it to everyone's email. There we go.
Perfect, and it's okay to have it in the chat if it's public, correct?
That's for this one. Yes, that's fine. But I can go through while you're waiting to get the document as well. So one of your questions had been, your application lists both the Fund for Educational Excellence and the Baltimore Civic Fund as donation distributors. Please clarify the entity or entities that will be responsible for accounting and distributing the solicited funds, and if multiple entities are involved, the relationship between them. The answer is the funds will be held and distributed by the Fund for Educational Excellence. Number 2 was please disclose the person or persons within the distributing entity or entities who will be responsible for fund distribution and accounting. The answer is all cash disbursements are ultimately approved by Fund for Educational Excellence, CEO Roger Schulman. Prior to his approval, disbursements are reviewed by 3 members of the finance team, including Charles Atkins, who serves as the organization's CFO. And I can keep reading, or if you want to discuss any of these, let me know.
Yeah, we'll jump in.
Okay, number 3 was please describe how the funds will be held pending distribution. For example, will they be held in a trust or other dedicated account, in a general account, commingled with other funds, etc. Answer. Funds will be held in the M&T Bank General Operating Accounting for Fund for Educational Excellence. Cash is not segregated by bank account, but is segregable via our accounting system. 4, what measures will be taken by the distributing entity or entities to ensure that the donations will actually be used for the intended purposes? And this is a somewhat involved answer. The fund has adopted and implemented ASC Topic 958 and its subsequent update, ASU 2016-14, which I assume are accounting documents, issued by the Financial Accounting Standards Board as part of adopting and complying with generally accepted accounting principles. This topic stipulates that not-for-profit entities must identify and separate funds with a donor-imposed restriction or stipulation in terms of time or project. Donations to this specific fund would fall into the category of a donor-imposed restriction by project. Further, the fund maintains identifiable balances for each unique program held at the fund and is audited on a yearly basis. This standard and its implementation are audited on an annual basis by an independent licensed CPA firm. To comply with ASCH 958, the fund has set up its accounting system to identify and track all contributions and expenses on a project basis. The projects identified are aligned with donor-imposed restrictions, and fund balances are maintained on a per-project basis. All expenses processed by the fund, reviewed internally by 3 separate personnel to determine allocation to the appropriate projects and to determine the allowability of expenses. In the case of granting funds to projects and organizations, the fund maintains a grant-making process that requires projects to adhere to the intent of the project they apply to and to provide substantive documentation in the form of financial and narrative reports to ensure delivery of services that adhere to the donor-imposed restriction. Number 5, what measures are in place to account for the donations? In the event the donations exceed the charitable need, please state how the additional funds will be allocated or dispersed. Answer. Contributions and the related materials received with funds are reviewed, allocated, and recorded on an ongoing basis. Documentation is reviewed for time and project restrictions imposed by the donor in order to determine the allocation to the appropriate project. In the event that the donor's intent is unclear, the donor is contacted for clarification. Donations received for projects are netted against the allowable expenses for each project, and the remaining balance is added to a temporarily restricted net asset account held for the donor-imposed restriction on the fund's balance sheet until the restrictions are met. If donations exceed charitable need, the donor is contacted to determine if they would like to redirect their funds to another purpose of their choosing or have unspent funds returned. This is completed as the projects are identified as ending and are processed by the first in, first out method. And finally, question number 6, please provide additional details about the measures that will be taken by either the Baltimore Civic Fund, the Fund for Educational Excellence, or both to ensure that controlled donors will not receive preferential treatment. Due to the purpose of the funds being raised, there will be a limited number of vendors. Prior to cash disbursement, each vendor relationship will be reviewed by FFEE in order to identify any potential conflicts with donations received into the fund. In addition, if any funds are distributed to city schools for reimbursement, FFEE will require city schools to provide source material for the reimbursement and will subject those vendors to the same review. The end. I think people may be muted.
Gosh, I'm sorry.
I am muted. Sorry.
Like,
I was
What did you do, Sue?
talking away. I was talking away. Steve, I'll defer to
Okay.
you until.
No, go ahead. No, you guys were the genesis of this, and quite frankly, I appreciate it because I think you all are looking through a different prism with these solicitation waiver requests, which had about a 950% batting average in the past, but that doesn't mean that's the way it should be. So you have asked questions already that might have gone above and beyond what some of the other board members have done in the past. So I'm liking this new normal. So I want to hear from you on what you think. And I want to also talk about whether we want to make sure that future solicitation waiver requestees may be prepared to answer the same.
No, I agree. And just in the interest of brevity and I just to start with the last first, it seems to me, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong or if your interpretation is different, that it's going to be the fund for educational excellence that ultimately determines whether there are conflicts with regard to distribution. Is that your understanding as well?
That Jeff? Now Jeff's muted. Awesome.
On the last answer, the ultimate answer seems to be that yes, fund for educational excellence is the fund that will be, the people that run it are the ones that are going to determine conflict. Is that right?
Each vendor relationship will be reviewed by FFEE in order to identify any potential conflicts. That sounds right. And I suppose that might be the case because at the first level, Cohen's office had already said in their application that they would not be targeting donors. So I don't know if that's providing an additional level.
Okay,
Steve,
because it
anyway,
seems that the funds come out of a general operating account. I personally feel comfortable with the explanation about independent accounting audits being based on standard principles relevant to donors. I personally feel comfortable with that process. But, you know, I'm interested in your thoughts on having FFEE determine conflicts. Those are my thoughts for the answers.
I guess that leaves me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think the response addressed my concerns. A major concern, frankly, was that we were being given a pro forma application format, and that something because it was pro forma, it might some things might the city might be taken. The board might be taken for granted, and I didn't want to see that happen. So I thought asking further questions might make sense. The office did respond, and so I'm comfortable with the response as I can be at this moment.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to at least point out that might be relevant to Melody's question on the application for Digital Divide. I'm not sure if you have that in front of you. I sent it out yesterday evening just to refresh your memories. Part of the standard question under Part D is describe measures to be taken to ensure that the solicitation will be directed at a broad range of donors and will not specially target controlled donors. And Cohen's office had written potentially will be solicited based on their history of participating in activities related to this specific campaign or have interest in similar causes. Those potential donors who are controlled donors will not be targeted or singled out in any way and will be solicited, if at all, in the general manner as other potential donors. So I mean, the purpose of a waiver is to allow a solicitation to potentially be made to even a controlled donor, and the concern would be how will they just not target those donors, and that answer went to that question. And I guess if there were other potential questions about or conflicts, that's where FFEE said they would potentially step in. That's my best interpretation of what they're trying to say.
I mean, I think that's fair, and I think based on his explanation, treating all donors equally is the only way around not targeting controlled donors. The only other point I would add is that I would just ask you, Arnold, to make sure you're comfortable with answer to number 5. I know that you raised the question of whether or not or how any unspent funds would be utilized or returned, and that was their answer, that they would either be returned or they would be redirected. So as long as you're comfortable with that response.
I'm glad you, I want to thank you. I can't see the chat, one. Thank you for resurrecting that particular concern. Redirected was, I presume, redirected to an acceptable use, is what they're saying, what he's saying, the office is saying. So I have no other choice other than to accept it. I don't want to have the councilman and his staff feel we're hectoring them. Instead, I wanted to just say, tell us more. So don't assume that what you said the first time I was going to fly. So, and they did. They came back and added additional information. What I do know is that I said, and thank you, Melody, if I went back and said, wait a minute, redirected where? It will be off of my head. So I don't want that. So I'm fine with it. The point is, I'm still, as I said, I'm fine with it.
All right. Should we move to approve the solicitation request by Councilman Cohen's office for the Digital Divide program?
Yes.
Yeah.
Get a second? All right. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. So the request has been approved. Now, do we want to go into administrative session for this second one, Jeff? This is, I mean, obviously, you know, we're talking about a legal interpretation here.
So you're talking about the report that was submitted?
Nope. I'm thinking of something completely different. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's go on to B for the review of the gift solicitation report for Healing City.
And let me ask you, Steve,
Sure.
Is this something that was put on the board's agendas before? When the solicitation has been approved, there are requirements in the ethics code about filing reports on a regular basis about the activities of that solicitation, and those are to be made public, but it seems as though it's potentially something that the board would also like to review to make sure it's fitting in with the solicitation parameters. So that's why I put it on the agenda. So it's kind of up to you all if you want to review that.
Yeah. So in the past, we didn't see a lot of reports to review. Given the number of requests that we had, it would seem to me that we only would see a small fraction of them. And that is because staff may have wanted, either it was a really big project or else staff may have noted what it could have appeared to have been inconsistencies. But it's my understanding, and that might be something you just want to talk to, institutional history with Mr. DeFranco or Mr. Eisenstark, because we didn't get a lot of these. When we got them, there was a reason we got them. So, but I'm again at the pleasure of the board on how we'd like to deal with these going forward.
Yeah, and I can at least say from the code perspective, once the solicitation is approved, there are supposed to be reports made depending on the amount that's requested to solicit. So, and I think you're right, there have not all agencies or individuals who have received solicitation waivers have been keeping up on those report requirements. And that's something that Mara and I identified as an area of improvement to actually make sure that it's part of the obligation of a solicitation waiver that you need to be filing reports. So we know that the solicitation is actually within the scope. So we will be talking to our counterparts to sort of see what's outstanding, what we still need to collect, So I suppose for you, and we're happy to do a preliminary review and bring potential problem reports to your attention, but you all can decide if you would like to have a routine view of those reports once they come in, or if that's something you want to leave to us unless we see a problem.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about the solicitation report for Healing City?
So just so that I'm clear, again, being newer to the board, the solicitation waivers that are granted are then accompanied by an obligation to report periodically after the fact. Is that correct? That's what this this group of documents is. That's the purpose of this group of documents. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So, and Jeff, you're historically saying that the board, well, first of all, that it's not an obligation that's always adhered to, and that the board may or may not review these on a regular basis. Is that right? That's
also right.
Okay. So this will just be my opinion, is that I feel as though we have a lot on our plate. So I would suggest, unless Jeff and Maura, who have much more on their plates, but unless Jeff and Maura disagree, that we let them do a preliminary review of these reports as they come in, particularly if this is an area for improvement, meaning we're going to start seeing more of them, so that we are not in session for 7 hours a month. That would be my suggestion.
I second that suggestion. So, you guys okay with it?
Yeah,
staff okay
that's
with
fine.
it, really? Yeah. Okay.
No, staff is fine with that, and I agree. It sounds like this may be an area of change anyway, but I at least feel that it's important for accountability purposes to make sure that the reports are being filed. And in fact, You probably saw that in the materials that I sent for this one, there was an amendment, and that's because there had been a very just generic report filed that didn't give many details as far as I had interpreted it. So I asked for additional information, which was provided. So that is an example of something that staff can do to review that process. And then potentially, like I said, we'll just bring something to you if there's a problem. So I think
and it's right. And if somebody's not filing reports, that's what we want to know. Then we do want to know and make sure that the follow-up has been made.
And we're trying to get a handle on that as well. That's a new frontier.
All right. Should we go on to new business at this time?
Sure.
All right, Jeff, I see you have meetings scheduled on there. What does that mean?
A little bit related to a potential hours-long meeting. I'm wondering if the board sees any utility in potentially maybe meeting every 3 weeks, or something a bit more regularly, so that each monthly meeting does not take on a marathon character.
I'm okay with that, but that it is a volunteer board, and
right.
The only problem with 3 weeks is then you're like, oh, it's one of those things you're really going to have to use the technology to remember that it's this Wednesday, not next Wednesday. At least when we were always doing second Wednesday or whatever the heck we were doing, I could look at my calendar and say, yep, that's the day. So, I mean, I guess if it's every third, yeah.
Or could it be every, if it was potentially even every 2 weeks? Every 3 weeks might be a better way to start out, seeing if more frequency helps.
Here's why. Because, as long as we're on WebEx and we could be at the beach, we could be anywhere and do this, and it's no big deal. But at some point that, you're asking us to drive down there, to sweat, to pay to park, to get your good shoes on, to come to City Hall. And so, if I could do that less, I'd be okay with it. So 3 weeks, awesome. And at some point, and maybe if the board, we're going to have to live and see how this works out, see how popular we are, without saying any more, and thus how much work is on our plate. And also, as we develop a groove with, disposing with the matters. So I think right now we probably ought to do every third week. Wednesday has been relatively good for me, if it's good for you. 2:30 was a time that often enabled everybody to break out before they had to pick up their kids at like 4:30 and 5 o'clock. Our last couple of meetings have gone beyond that time. There are no kids to pick up for me anymore, but I'm even thinking, if you're talking about changing the frequency, I'm even thinking about a time change. What do the other members think?
A time change to what, Steve?
As far as even changing the meeting start time. Is 2:30 good for you guys? Is it right in your wheelhouse?
Right now, 2:30 works for me, but just because I've scheduled to have a mediations I've scheduled, and just by happenstance, the most recent one has been scheduled from noon until 2. So a 2:30 board session would not be a problem. If we started earlier, it would be a problem for me for the moment. In time,
all right,
work it in.
Okay, and Melody.
I'm flexible with both timing and frequency of meetings, so I'm at your service.
All right, great. And like I say, if any of us, myself included, has an identifiable conflict with the next regularly scheduled meeting date, then just say it, and we'll try to have a new meeting date or time. But at this point, given what I'm hearing, I want to move that we change the frequency of our ethics board meetings from once a month to once every 3 weeks.
Oh, I second.
All right.
I'm good with that as well.
All right. All in favor of the change to once every 3 weeks meeting, signified by saying aye. Aye.
Wait, before you vote. Sorry, Donna.
You already voted. You early voted. No, I'm aware. I'm aware of that. I'm aware.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'd be happy to find a way for us to vote on this once we get a hold of Donna. I'd hate to wait another month for more activity to pile up before we start to shovel the snow. If we can, let me amend that to say subject, that the vote, we took the vote. If Donna has any objection to that, we'll immediately revisit that. I mean, I know what you're saying. It's like, I missed one meeting and now all of a sudden we're meeting every 3 weeks. Like, wow, where'd that come from? So Jeff, if you would send her an email just saying that quite frankly, that you brought this up, not me. You got us in this trouble. So yes, so I'm sure she's probably okay with it. So, but if there's a problem with it, we will immediately address that so that we don't, screw up her schedule.
What we can do after the meeting is send out perhaps the next 4 meeting schedules based on the every 3 week frequency. And if anyone has objections to particular meetings at that time, they can let us know and she can be part of that. And I'll tell her what happened.
Thank you.
And did you say 2:30 or would you like to move it to 2 to try to be safe?
No, I think, I guess he's got mediation until 2. Okay. So I don't think you want to move it any closer, Arnold. Yeah. So we'll stay at 2. Unless there's any objection, we'll stay at 2:30.
Okay.
Okay. This is exciting. Yeah, the next part.
The next part was ethics training for the board members. And as I mentioned, Arnold and Donna sat in on the training that we conducted for DGS. And, I'd like for Melody and Steve, if you wanted to also either sit in on a pre-scheduled one, or if the board members felt as though having training for the board members themselves would be helpful, we're at your pleasure. So let us know.
No, I'd be. Go ahead.
I would love to sit in on any available trainings, and then
Okay.
maybe if we have questions specific to our role on the board as follow-up, we can do that just to
Great.
be efficient.
You
I
too,
agree.
Steve?
100%.
Okay. I have a comment or two about the training. Is this the right segment of the meeting to discuss that comment?
Sure.
Okay. One, it was done very, very well. What you covered, I thought you covered very well. It struck me as being a fairly large pie of things for someone to take in. And though I'm sure it's codified someplace, it would be really cool to, I don't know if it's, we should just have a list, we should try to arrange things as do's and don'ts, or I like the role play, but I like the role play piece. That was great, but it's just a lot of information for someone to take in.
Absolutely.
And I left the experience thinking, you know, a cheat sheet wouldn't hurt, where something that summarized this, because not every employee is going to be interested in everything that's being covered. I was amazed at how much you were able to cover, and how well, you know, and how credibly you covered what you covered. But it's a lot of information, and to the point where at some point people, I think, may not be listening, maybe. So how can we effectively get over what we need to get over, but at the same time have it be digestible, and have people, give the people a chance to focus on the things that really concern them, you know, that hit home for them, as opposed to some employee in some far reach of the city employment realm. Just saying.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback. It's something that Mara and I have discussed a bit, and I think Donna had some similar feedback. You know, the code does require several officials and employees to receive 2 hours of ethics code training, and we would like to find, you know, now that we have the basic ethics training, we'd like to find ways to make it more targeted to each audience that we will be training. So with different hypotheticals during the training, different sort of discussions during the training, and then after the training or even beforehand, you're right, I think cheat sheets are very helpful. So maybe a one-pager that talks about, you know, when you need to recuse, or a one-pager that talks about what outside employment you can or can't have.
Right.
That's on our radar. So I think you're right.
Okay.
It's a work in progress.
I mean, but what concerns me is that, if I heard you correctly, I'm pretty sure I did, you have an official training coming up for the comptroller and his staff, and not too far afterwards, an official training coming up for the city council president. I don't think you want to fumble those balls. I mean, I think you want to get that right. I mean, wait, let me be clear again. What you did well. I thought you were affable, knowledgeable. There were times when I thought maybe you were speaking as a city solicitor almost. But that just shows how intelligent you are. Point though is that how much of an interpreter of right and wrong do you personally want to be? Because some things you were saying should come to the ethics board, or maybe to the OIG. And so, you know, as the instructor, the current instructor, how much of this do you want to shoulder as here's the truth according to Jacob. You know, how much of that do you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, the purpose is at least to give an overview of what the law is, simply because that's a requirement, and that's tough. You know, it is a lot of material to cover, and I'd hoped that it was made clear during that session that if there are ever any questions, the board and board staff are here. So certainly the training isn't a place it's a place to give black and white law, yes, but it's also a place to welcome discussion and welcome concern and welcome future interaction with the ethics board. So those are all good points to keep in mind. And I'll say, we're starting from, I mean, it's a tough position going into, because we're starting from a training background and context that was virtually, at least according to those I've spoken with throughout the city, virtually non-existent, or at the very least not very effective. So there's anything we do, I feel, is going to be an improvement. And unfortunately, I'm not sure we can wait till it's perfect to roll it out. I mean, there's a timeline that new officials have to be trained in. And Arnold, if you would like to sit in on those trainings and even be a more active part, give some thought exercises, or et cetera, I would welcome that as well. Same with other board members. For instance, it was very helpful having Donna there, because she was able to bring some of her background experience. So it's not just hearing me drone on about what the ethics requirements are.
Definitely.
So I will share the upcoming training dates, and any board members who would like to be a part of that and take on any active role they would like, I would welcome.
It sounded like the comptroller's office training is coming up fairly soon. Am I right about that?
Right. Yeah. They and that was at their request. They wanted it Friday.
Okay. I mean, it would be great. It can't happen. I'll just speak it out loud, though. It'd be great if you could do another training for the ethics board members. It would, I mean, one, just to give them to dial them in, for one thing, and two, it would just give you more time to shake out some of the things and figure out what it is you want to include and what it is you might want to leave out before you go to Comptroller Henry's people. But I don't think there's time to do that, right, unless it'll be fine. I mean, it won't be the end of the world. If they don't get something, or one of the things you said is doors always open. Yeah, you emphasize that a lot. So I think that was pretty cool, and so good.
And let me put that on Melody or Steve or Arnold's calendar. If you would like to sit in on that, we will forward you the invitation, and it's at 3 o'clock this Friday.
Okay.
3 o'clock this Friday.
And that was even beyond the point they wanted to be trained. They contacted us and wanted a training within the next day or two, and we pushed them out to at least we had come up with the basic training. I mean, I think we have to understand that the transitions and the teams are very busy, and I'm not sure we're in a great position to say let's do this at some other time. I mean, I'd rather take advantage of it while we have their attention.
Right.
Jeff, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Arnold. I'm sorry.
This is just short and sweet, Melody. But it would be great if the training answered a question, and that is, how do you stay out of trouble? I mean, indirectly answered that question by doing this, by doing that, by avoiding this, by avoiding that temptation, but not doing this. I mean, if somehow that unspoken question could be answered, then I think people would find this to be very practical, very helpful, very comforting. The outgoing comptroller, unless she's already gone, has had some issues arise during her term, this last term, and so I'm sure that the new one coming in wants to get it right, and does not want to fall afoul of the press or the public or expectation of the public itself. So any guidance we can give them to keep them on the straight and narrow, I'm sure will be helpful. And probably you were going to do that anyway. You know, you being brilliant and all.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm making clear that the
You are.
door is open. I mean, the training is training is just the beginning, hopefully, of the relationship with the ethics board.
Sorry, Melanie. Thank you. I'll be quiet.
No, don't. No. I just, the point I wanted to make was Jeff had asked if we wanted to be, receive an invitation to Friday's training. If it's okay, would you just can you send us any of the upcoming training invites and then let us see what fits with our calendar?
Absolutely. And there
Okay,
are
wonderful.
currently 2, so we can do that.
All 2 of them. All right. Thank you so much, Jeff.
But there will be more.
Jeff, what's the other date besides Friday the 13th?
The 23rd at 5 o'clock.
That'll be a dead week. Isn't that?
Right.
Yeah, that's Thanksgiving. Yeah,
That's the
I'd
city
be more,
council president, right?
Yep.
I'd be more inclined to jump on that one, to be honest. Is that also 3 o'clock?
That's 5 o'clock.
Oh, it's 5. You said that, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all the bars will be shut down by then. I'll have some free time. All right. Not a problem.
Okay.
And just to comment specifically for Arnold and his suggestions, something that we will be doing is asking each agency to provide ethical situations that the staff members might find themselves in, and then we'll address those specific situations. So we're waiting for the comptroller staff to respond, and then we will discuss those with them during the training.
Cool. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, similar to what we did with the DGS hypotheticals.
Right. Nice. Great. And I'm sorry, this is off the track a little bit, but there's no way that we can I can adjust this screen so I can see. I don't want to be scowling and not know it. I want to see what my physiognomy looks like.
Arnold,
so
if you go to each of the squares of those individuals on the screen, there should be 3 dots next to their name if you hover over it. You see that? And then you can check pin, and that should pin their view to your screen. I think you can do that with yourself as well.
I don't see myself, period. I'm the invisible man. I have no image of myself. And I just did the pin piece. As you suggested, I'll do unpin now. But I don't see me. And it's not ego, it's just a case of, if I'm frowning, I want to know I'm frowning. You know?
Well, at least from my end, Arnold is frozen. I don't know if he's been frozen for everyone else.
I can't see Arnold.
I can see Arnold, and he moves occasionally.
Oh, well, I'm moving around, so I don't see me at all. I see a different view of the
You
together
are frozen.
view. Would you say, Steve?
You're frozen. You are definitely frozen.
Well,
I didn't notice it before, but now it's clear as day to me.
How interesting, because I frankly don't see me at all. But I see 3 dots that I didn't see before. And let's see.
Everyone could try to pick the together mode, and it puts us all in this fun seating, and we can see all of our faces.
Seating thing, but all I see is the 4 of you all. I don't see you.
Is your camera on, Arnold?
Yeah. I mean, how could it not? Yeah, that's me. Yes, it's on. Let me make sure though.
Maybe try turning it off and on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just toggled it, and it's toggled from off to on. It's on. There was no slash through it, so I was pretty confident that it was on, as is my mic. But no biggie. I mean, it's just.
There you go.
There you are.
Oh,
I see your mouth moving now.
Mara, you're amazing. Now I'm getting ready to get emotional. Okay, I'll get it.
All right. We'll let you know if you freeze up again.
Okay, thank you.
You might want to have somebody check on you at home. Just we'll call home if we see you freeze up again.
Okay, that'll
So.
be a great thing. That'll be a
All
great
right.
thing. Thank you. Okay,
Sure.
good to be seen.
So, Arnold, are we? You want to talk more about the training?
No, I mean, again, hats off to Jeff and Donna. This is what I want to talk about a little bit, but I'm going to make it short. That way, if it doesn't resonate, you all just stop me and we'll go on to something else. Donna's insight about ethics seems like it's really profound. She did it in what I'm calling it the aerospace industry. I think it's more like the defense industry. I think it was Northrop Grumman, right?
Yes.
And so the consequences of unethical behavior were costly and heavy. So her antenna is a very, very sensitive antenna to be admired. We're in a different venue here, and I'm wondering, and we're going to see that, I think, when we start to talk about this Baltimore Brew article. But the question is, if we were to do a public service announcement, like the Register of Wills does, she does periodically. She'll do something to do an announcement that says something like, "Where there's a will, there's a way." I don't think it's all that great, but it's okay. At least it's something. Just reminding people that they might need a will. But if we wanted to do something, I'm not advocating. I'm not interested in advocating such a thing. But if we were to do one, what would we hold out to the public that we're doing for them? What would we hold out to the public that they should expect from us as an ethics board? And trust me, the easy answer is, if we started naming things, the easy answer would be all of the above. But all of the above is not a practical answer. We need to be good at what we're doing, and so my curiosity, I'm curious about what that might be, what it is we individually think we are, our first, second, and third priority might be, to see if we can find a sweet spot where we're on the same page.
I'll chime in quickly. I'm not entirely sure I'm answering any of the questions or speaking to all the points that you made, but I will say that I think what we are doing is pretty well spelled out on the newly updated website, and that's a great resource for the public. I think you are looking for a more organic answer potentially, but to that I would say that Arnold, you and I have just joined the board, and we are working pretty hard to respond to and review solicitation waivers and other complaints. And we've worked pretty hard. We've spent a number of hours, numerous hours in the past 3 months. And so I think there are some things that we can talk to the public about and some things that we can't. And I would just say organically, it will be apparent as we grow as a board how hard we are working, and in addition, how more importantly, how hard Jeff and Mara are working to help us and to help the city. So to address some of the highlights that I heard in what you just said, that's what I'll say. But perhaps, this is a discussion for a closed session more, or a time that we're not wedded to an agenda. But I do appreciate what you're saying. And, I think we all want to do an excellent job and do the best job that we can. So I thank you for raising those points.
Well, thank you for saying it.
And where this game is changing very quickly, Arnold. It's the addition or the oversight of OIG and Mara and Jeff. I mean, I'm seeing light speed changes to this to the way that this board their physical appearance, quite frankly, is changed dramatically. And I think the idea that our meetings are going to be on YouTube is right there. One of the like most basic aims of transparency. So I have a lot of confidence in what these two young people are doing with our board. So I'm excited for the future. Again, it's not the most exciting stuff in the world most of the time, but it is an important part of city government. And I think we're finally being recognized by the rest of the city government. And it's been a good year for the ethics board, and part of it is it's being taken over by OIG. So I'm thrilled. Whatever you guys are doing, keep doing it. That's the way I look at it. Thank you.
And I appreciate that, and I think Arnold's points are very sound as well. In that the buck ends up stopping with the board. We can do everything that we can to give you the tools, give the public the education about the code. But having engaged members is also very important, and I thank you for that. It's clearly a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay. Yep.
All right. Do we want to move along to the discussion of board responsibility and process on the complaint and enforcement process, Jeff? Or?
Yeah, and if you find this helpful, this was going to be sort of a category where we potentially dive into at least one segment of the board responsibility, so everyone is on the same page about what your authority is and how the process works, and we can get feedback from you all if you would like to play a different or particular role in part of that process. So I can quickly go through this if we'd like. For time purposes, if you'd rather get into the administrative agenda, that's really up to you all.
We do have what appears to be a substantive amount of work ahead of us today. I would suggest without objection that we postpone that portion of the discussion. Obviously, it's going to be a multi-part discussion. It's going to be a continuing education, so I would ask, especially if we're thinking about going to 3 weeks, we talked about going to 3 weeks, maybe we punt this for 21 days. Are we good with that?
I agree.
Cool. Okay. Then if that's the case, I think it's appropriate to move here at 3:51 p.m. that we enter into administrative session.
Second.
All right.